Let's do some guitars and chilling. I want to talk about some stuff that I personally don't see getting talked about that much in guitar YouTube world, using guitars in the context of electronic music and kind of resampling recordings of riffs and stuff. Rather than like writing everything on the instrument or on the guitar itself for a whole song. And I'm just going to show some sort of methods and techniques that I use for that. I think they're pretty fun and interesting because it's like, you don't really have to be that great a guitarist to be able to do some of this stuff, and I think most people can probably pick one up and get cracking using the methods that I'm going to use in this video. To start off with, I've got my guitar loaded up here in Logic. I'm just plugged in directly into my audio interface, and I'm not going through any sort of other preamps or anything like that. It's just straight in, and this is what it sounds like by default. So yeah, kind of dull and lifeless. Just to give my guitar a little bit of character, I'm going to use Archetype Cory Wong by Neural DSP. Yeah, this is a really, really good amp simulator. I'm just going to load up a basic clean, I like this preset here called Clean as a Whistle. So I'm just going to use this as a starting place. One of the first methods that I like to kind of start coming up with an idea or a track is to kind of come up with like a guitar part that's like 3 guitar parts in one, and like a 3-part or at least a 2 or 3-part harmony. Instead of using a chord that's like down here and like that uses all 6 strings, or like a bar chord, I just like to usually start with a 3-note chord on some of the top 3 strings, so something a bit like more twinkly and delicate, like. So like, there's a reason for that, to not use like too dense a shape yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of establish the chord I'm going to use, or like some notes that I like, and I'm just going to try something like this. So I prefer these kind of like, so I feel like this shape is kind of in between like minor and major. It doesn't really give away like exactly what mood it is yet, I think. Whereas this is like obviously like, it's happy, you know? So like, I think starting there, you've already kind of like painted yourself into a corner. Whereas I think these intervals. So I like that shape, and I'm going to start with that, and I'm just going to sort of like record in a random arpeggiated rhythm out of that to click track. So if my track is at 175 BPM, I'm going to see if I can come up with a picking pattern for this shape that I kind of like, that flows around that nicely. So that'll be alright. I'm just going to record that. So you might notice that my guitar input is quite noisy, so I'm just going to really quickly denoise that by bringing my recording into a program called Isotope RX. I'm going to highlight this section here, which I know is just like all the noise. You can kind of see it's just noise, all like fuzzy like that. And I'm going to use this tool called Spectral Repair. Oh wait, no, sorry, Spectral Denoise. And then if you hit learn, that now basically, if I hit render on that, you can see that what that's just done is reduce the noise in my recording, but left the guitar part alone. So that would have got rid of some of the noise. And now if I save that, exit, and now go back to Logic and listen to that. Cool. Now I'm going to duplicate this track, and I'm going to loop this selection, and I'm just going to try and find a second chord or a second set of notes playing the same rhythm as that first part, to see if I can find something that like harmonizes with it in a nice way, basically. Okay, so that might work as a low one. there's a low melody. So hang on, let's make this a little bit clearer. Guitar low. We've got a low one, a medium one, and now I'm going to find a set of notes much higher up to be like the kind of high melody. So I've found two shapes there that I like, so I'm going to actually use them both and kind of come up with a little chord progression there. I've kind of got a loop there to start with. The reason I didn't use like a full-on dense chord shape is because I think it just fills the sonic register out too much if you use like the full range of the guitar and these big like, you know, full bar chords or whatever. And the reason for that is because if I now add in like a synth bass under this, and if I just start playing like random notes in underneath it, it basically affects the mood or kind of the emotion of the guitar part, which I think is quite like fun for sort of coming up with sections or chord progressions for your tracks. Okay, so I'm just going to play some random notes with that over my loop here. So you can hear that I can move the root note of the bass around quite a lot without like destabilizing what's happening with these notes, right? I think, yeah, you can kind of come up with a loop that way. Okay, so that's kind of boring at the moment, but it's a start. And yeah, we can start putting some different effects on some of these layers just to kind of see if that gives it something. Let's try putting on some echoes. Also group all of these together and then start putting different effects on them, maybe like a filter, or I love me some of my multi-effects plugins like of course set up some of that to record. So if I send my guitar grouped here to a bus 3, guitar effects, I'll call that, and then now if I create a new audio track with its input set to that bus 3 guitar effects, I can now record preset changes and stuff. So method 2 is very similar to method 1, but instead of recording guitar parts that are like playing the same locking rhythm, come up with different rhythms for each guitar part, kind of in a sort of Steve Reich vibe. If you think of like Electric Counterpart 3, how that's like a bunch of different guitar parts that all interlock to make one phrase or melody. I'm going to try something out like that. So I'm just going to use one of my riffs from one of my band Luo's tracks called Intertwined. Artists, Jack Gardner, Cleaner the Whiffle. Dead simple, right? I'm actually going to record it twice. I'm going to double track it. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to quantize both of these lightly, so I'm just going to try and see if I can come up with some other random layers, other notes that hit different rhythmic spaces to what these ones are playing, which should be fairly easy. I'm going to try just holding some chords in over that and see if I can kind of come up with a nice progression to go with it, essentially. So let's start having some fun with this. So we've got our kind of loop established here, and I'm just going to start playing around, putting some different effects on it, maybe changing how things are. Let's try some delays. Okay, so that's kind of cool in and of itself, right? I'm going to create a bounce of this, is what I'm going to do. So this audio file here is everything, all of that, just condensed down to one file here, right? So I'm actually just going to basically cut this all up into different chunks, and I'm going to start doing some different things with this. So let's create a little stutter here. That's cool. We can start kind of creating a different riff out of our sort of loop that we've come up with there. So I'm going to reverse this little chunk here, see what that yields. Another thing that you can do here, we can draw a little fade out on this part here, change it to a slow down. So that's one way to kind of do things, which I think is quite a fun way to kind of like inspire yourself to come up with different things that you wouldn't usually think of. Let's go into Ableton Live because it's really, really, really fun for doing sort of live effects processing. I'm going to change Ableton's tempo to 110. Let's just set up my silly effects chain on this that I've used before for doomage bullshit. Okay. Right. Hello. Cool. So yeah, it's a very similar effects chain to what I was using for the Doom instrument in my previous videos, but now instead of applied to a bass synth or drums, I'm applying it to guitar. So I'm gonna record some of this. And if I tweak some settings, so that's just giving me like a whole ton of stuff to kind of work with out of that. If I just chop up some... No idea what this might sound like. Let's... As guitarists, we love to noodle, which means, you know, like we just love playing just like random bollocks. And I think something that's really fun to do when you've got like a guitar effect set up like this array, is just to play through it and like kind of see what might happen as a result of like me playing just random licks through this fucking stupid preset, right? And now I'm just going to play along to the click. So a lot of that probably sounds absolutely awful, but yeah, it's just an example of some of the fun ways that you can kind of turn absolute waffle nonsense into some potentially cool sounds that are different from some of the standard guitar noises that you can get. Yeah, hope you've enjoyed this one. Laters potatoes.